reduction in...
Oh, sorry. Please, I'm not saying it to one side without the others chipping in. There's been quite enough, please. The public don't like it, and I don't want to tolerate it.
Watch how tensions explode in the House of Commons as David Lammy comes under intense pressure during a brutal showdown over Labour's controversial jury reforms. What starts as a routine exchange quickly spirals into chaos, with MPs accusing the government of hypocrisy, confusion, and risking one of Britain's oldest legal traditions. As questions pile up, Lammy appears cornered, struggling to defend a policy that has already triggered rebellion within his own party. Is this a necessary reform or a dangerous gamble with justice itself? Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Britain Daily. It's completely free and it helps us keep bringing you the hard-hitting stories that matter. Let's watch this explosive clip.
Waiting for justice. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that the crocodile tears from the party opposite today just shows why the public should never put the trust in the arsonists to put out the fire?
100% very grateful to my honourable friend, and it's why the Shadow Justice Secretary, when he stands up, should apologise, because he was sat in the Home Office while this was happening.
Talk of which, Shadow Justice Secretary Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry. Look, that bench was disorderly yesterday. I don't want this bench disorderly today. Give the courtesy to hear what the question is, please. We've got a situation where I'm inundated with constituents who are complaining about the behaviour of MPs in this chamber. I expect ministers to set the best example, not the worst. Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, we learned this weekend, once said trials without juries mean evidence is not properly tested and can lead to wrongful convictions. Was he wrong?
If that's the best he can do, Mr. Speaker, of course he wasn't wrong. That is why jury trials will remain the cornerstone of our system. What a waste of a question.
Nick Timothy.
Mr. Speaker, I think the public will be very disappointed by this behaviour. The Justice Secretary cannot get his story straight. Like the Prime Minister, he once said criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. Now he says they're a good idea, and his justification for this change is changing by the minute. Last week, 10 Labour MPs voted against the Courts bill and 90 abstained. They're looking for a compromise, not in the House of Lords, but while this bill is in this House. The Justice Secretary just refused to agree a sunset clause in answer to my honourable friend. So for the sake of the 100 Labour MPs who do not trust him or his intentions, I will ask again, will he consider a sunset clause, or will he tell his own MPs no?
I've got to say to the honourable gentleman, he hasn't apologised for the state that they left the criminal justice system in, closing 40% of court buildings in England, 40%, and also a reduction in...
Oh, sorry. Please, I'm not saying it to one side without the others chipping in. There's been quite enough, please. The public don't like it, and I don't want to tolerate it.
And also a reduction in funding of 23%. He knows 90% of cases, criminal justice cases, are dealt with by the Magistrates' Court. 10% go to the Crown Court. 7% of those people plead guilty. That leaves 3%. Our bill is to deal with a small proportion of that in a new division so we can do that swiftly. I've explained for the reasons before about demand in the system, about the length of trial, why it is my judgment that these have to be sustained changes as were made by the Thatcher government at the end of the 80s and the Labour government at the end of the 70s. That is what I proposed. It will now go to committee and report stage and get the debate into discussion in the usual way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 7, please.
Minister.
This government is dedicated to increasing transparency in our courts. We're expanding free Crown Court sentencing transcripts to all victims who request them. We're also rolling out recording to all magistrates' courts so that all criminal cases heard in open court will now be recorded, as well as working with our judiciary to see where we can go even further in terms of transparency.
Mr. Speaker, the Courts and Tribunals Bill does indeed seek to increase transparency of court proceedings in several important respects, but conducting empirical research into how real juries make decisions will remain illegal in England and Wales. Researchers have had to rely on mock juries, which has shown a link between the attitudes of jurors and verdict decisions, in particular in rape trials. Does my honourable and learned friend friend agree with me that we must break down barriers to jury research so that we can develop appropriate reforms to address this problem?
Well, I thank my friend for his question. Of course, there are good reasons for protection of jury deliberations, making sure that they can happen in private. But we know that in Scotland, the government there has recently legislated for a tightly controlled exception to support research into jury deliberations. And I know that my officials are working with the Scottish office to see what lessons we can learn from that vital work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In February, the government ordered Courts Desk to delete the largest archive of court records in the country, an essential tool of transparency in the justice system. They changed their minds about that, which was incredibly welcome. But we don't yet have a clear sense of what the government intends to do with that archive or how it intends to move forward. Could the Minister please assure us today that Courts Desk will not be compelled to delete their archive in the future, and confirm whether Courts Desk will be allowed to continue operating their services moving forward?
So I'd like to start by reminding the House for the reason why we suspended the operations of Courts Desk, because of their handling of sensitive data and breach of the agreement that they had with government. But of course we recognise the importance of transparency and of the service that they provide. I recently met with Courts Desk. She will know, as I've updated the House, that we are intending to bring forward new licensing arrangements to make the court listing and registers available to more people, for journalists in particular. And we will be bringing forward plans as to how Courts Desk and others can bid for those new licences.
Neil Wilson.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Victims Code sets out exactly the rights that victims can expect to receive. We have now launched a consultation on a new Victims Code to ensure that it is fit for purpose for 2026 and that we get the foundations right for victims. We're also raising awareness of the Victims Code through an Understand Your Rights campaign. I want everyone to be aware of their rights.
Neil Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will recall that last month I raised with her the case of Roxana Lecker, who was convicted of child cruelty at a nursery in Twickenham. Her victim's parents were only given 6 days' notice that she was being deported just a few months into her 8-year sentence. So whilst the Victims Code currently says all reasonable steps should be taken to inform victims of an offender's immigration status and likelihood of deportation, it doesn't say when. So does the Minister agree with me that in updating the Victims Code, it should say that information about an offender's immigration and likely deportation status should be shared as early as possible in the process?
Yeah, I want all victims to have as much information as possible in a timely and appropriate fashion. This is exactly the type of information we need to include in a new Victims Code. It's why we're consulting. I'd be happy to meet with her and her constituents actually to hear of their experiences and how we can best shape this new code. All victims are entitled to information about their offender. We're expanding the victim contact scheme for just to include that so that they know their rights. But yeah, as I said, I'd be happy to work with her and any other honourable member to ensure that victims know their rights and that they're up to date.
Jess Brentford, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The family courts urgently need reforming so victims, especially those of domestic violence, are not experiencing a system that is being used by perpetrators to continue to control and abuse. The Domestic Abuse Commissioner reported that 73% of hearings in the family courts involved evidence of domestic abuse, but it's frequently not recognised in determinations. In the Courts and Tribunals Bill, the government has included a clause to remove the presumption of parental responsibility. So will the Secretary of State take the opportunity to increase the scope of the bill by including the family courts as a whole in the bill and restore some faith for victims in our family court system?
I welcome this question from the Liberal Democrat spokesperson. She will know my commitment to ensuring that the family court is safe for all involved, including children and domestic abuse victims. It's why we are repealing the presumption of parental involvement in contact in these cases in the Courts and Tribunals Bill. Just today, the Deputy Prime Minister has announced a national rollout of our child focus model, formerly known as Pathfinder, over the next 3 years. We are doing all we can to ensure that our family courts are safe and effective for all involved.
What you've just seen is more than just a heated exchange. It's a revealing glimpse into a growing political storm around one of the most fundamental pillars of the British justice system, the right to a jury trial. David Lammy walked into this debate knowing the stakes were high, but what unfolded showed just how deep the divisions run, not only between the government and the opposition, but within Labour itself. When MPs start openly questioning their own leadership, it signals something far more serious than routine disagreement. It suggests uncertainty, pressure, and a policy that may not be fully settled even at the top. At the heart of this clash is a simple but powerful question. Can you reform justice without undermining it? Jury trials have been a cornerstone of British law for centuries. They represent fairness, accountability, and the idea that ordinary citizens, not just officials, have a say in determining guilt or innocence. So when proposals emerge to limit or reshape that system, it's no surprise emotions run high. The opposition didn't hold back. They pointed to past statements, highlighting what they see as contradictions in the government's position. One moment, jury trials are essential. The next, they're being scaled back. For critics, that raises serious concerns about consistency and trust. Lammy, for his part, attempted to shift the focus. He pointed to the pressures on the justice system, overloaded courts, delays, and the need to process cases more efficiently. And he's not wrong. There is a real and growing backlog that affects victims, defendants, and the credibility of the system itself. But the question remains, is this the right solution? Because efficiency and justice don't always move in the same direction. Speeding up the system can come at a cost, and that cost, critics argue, could be fairness. That's why the demand for safeguards like sunset clauses or clearer limits became such a central part of this debate. It's not just about what changes are made, but how long they last, and whether they can be reversed if they go wrong. Another striking moment was the visible frustration in the chamber. Interruptions, sharp exchanges, and warnings from the Speaker all point to a debate that's becoming increasingly heated. And that matters, because it reflects how strongly MPs feel about this issue and how closely it's being watched by the public. Ultimately, this isn't just a political argument, it's a national conversation about justice, trust, and the balance between reform and tradition. The decisions made here will have real consequences for how cases are handled, how rights are protected, and how the public views the system as a whole. So now we turn to you. Do you think these reforms are necessary to fix a broken system, or do they go too far, risking the integrity of British justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Finally, make sure you subscribe to Britain Daily. It's completely free, and it helps us continue bringing you the most important, unfiltered moments from UK politics. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in the next one.